Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between.
I don't know what this world is coming to.
Some say it's hard to stay mad with so much beauty in America. You have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm sure, but you will someday. I'd like to start today's episode off by defining American. Oxford defines American as relating to or characteristics of the United States or its inhabitants, a native or citizen of the United States. Well, what is a citizen of the United States? A United States citizen is defined by the 14th Amendment's Citizenship Clause as all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. This grants birthright citizenship to individuals born on U.S. soil, regardless of their parent status, and allows for citizenship through the naturalization process. The Constitution outlines two primary ways to become a U.S. citizen. First, birthright citizenship. This is established by the 14th Amendment, which states that anyone born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction is a citizen. Number two is naturalization. This is the process by which a non-citizen can become a U.S. citizen. The process typically involves meeting requirements such as being at least 18 years old, having been a lawful permanent resident for a specific period, demonstrating good moral character, and showing an attachment to the U.S. Constitution. Today, in 2025, I think the current administration is redefining what it means to be an American. If you visit the White House website, you'll find a presidential memoranda addressed to the Secretary of State, Attorney General, and Homeland Security called Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence. It expresses that political violence, assassinations, and threats against democratic institutions have increased in the U.S. in recent years, and that these are not isolated but part of organized campaigns. It frames such violence as an existential threat to the functioning of democracy, urging a shift from purely reactive responses to more proactive, disruptive efforts against networks, funding, and infrastructure behind such violence. It links a number of events: the assassination of conservative podcaster Charlie Kirk, the 2024 assassination of a senior health executive, the 2022 attempt of Justice Kavanaugh, and even attempts on the president himself. One thing it doesn't mention is the assassination of Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives Melissa Hortman, or her husband Mark, who were both murdered in their home by Vance Luther Bolter, who was impersonating a police officer. This probably has to do with the fact that Vance was a known conservative Christian who felt that the enemy has gotten so far into the minds of Americans that they didn't even know what sets they were anymore. This document also explicitly names anti-fascism, which is often stylized as Antifa, as a organizing ideology behind violent extremism. It claims there is a misconception that the law enforcement is fascist and asserts that such ideological thought processes have become a rallying cry for violent domestic actors. It reflects the view that domestic extremism is now sufficiently sophisticated and requires tools used in counterterrorism or organized crime. By including doctrines like Dotson, coordinated radicalization, and metadata financial tracking, it signals a move towards surveillance, intelligence, and preventive measures in addition to purely criminal justice. Now, why should Americans, whether they're supporters of Trump or not, be concerned? I beg the question, what definitions will be used to distinguish legitimate political speech from radicalization or organized intimidation? That's a problem with open-ended terms like this. It leaves the door open for the definitions to be ever evolving, which ultimately could criminalize free speech or political organization if you disagree with who is in charge and who is determining those definitions. Investigating entities or financial backers of political movements could implicate nonprofit organizations and anyone who donates to them, as well as advocacy groups and anyone who follows them. And since the document frames anti-fascism as a central ideological target and frames certain political movements as threats to traditional American views, there is a risk of selective enforcement or bias. Because what exactly are traditional American views?
Hear me when I say this and hear me clearly. The fate of the nation is depending on the Democrats getting this shutdown through. That executive order is the exact moment this stopped just being about immigrants. I'm going to break this down by category. First things first, anti-Americanism. Have you ever said free Palestine? Have you ever disagreed with anything Donald Trump has had to say? Have you ever disagreed with, I don't know, how much you pay in taxes? Welcome to the list. Next item, anti-capitalism. Have you ever complained about your government not making gas prices low enough? Have you ever complained about rent being too high? What about property taxes? What about medical debt? What about healthcare costs? Welcome to the list. The third item, anti-Christian views. Are you anything but a Christian? Yes, that includes the Catholics. They put them robes on for y'all too. Welcome to the list with the rest of 6 out of 10 Americans that are not Protestant Christians. I'm never going to be on record supporting an overthrow of the U.S. government, so we are going to skip that one. We're going to jump right to extremism on migration. Do you believe immigrants should have rights? Are you an immigration attorney? Is your parent an immigrant and you would like them to be able to be here? Do you think Alligator Alcatraz was wrong? What about the border wall? Welcome to the list. Extremism on race. Are you a non-white person who believes they deserve dignity and respect? Welcome to the list. Extremism on gender. Are you a trans person? Are you not a trans person, but you think they deserve rights? Are you a woman who believes you deserve rights? Welcome to the list. Hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family. Are you a gay person? One of them polycule people? Are you a sex worker? Do you believe in equal marriage rights? Welcome to the list. Hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on religion. Again, are you a non-Christian? Yes, this includes the Catholics. Double welcome to the list, 60% of America. Hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on morals. Welcome to the list, anyone who pisses that guy off. This is literally their declaration of fascist dependence. If they don't shut this down, I'm talking about if we do not get that government shut down and stop the funding that's going to allow him to do this, and I mean this, if one Democrat votes to pass that budget bill, it's unforgivable. There's a reason he's threatening everyone with repercussions if the shutdown does happen. Believe me when I say this, it absolutely needs to.
I asked the same question to a diehard Obama supporter back in 2011 when Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act. For those who don't remember that act, it basically stated that you could indefinitely detain someone deemed as a terrorist without charge or trial into law. He stated he agreed because we needed to stop terrorism and not get caught up in the red tape of the legal system. So I asked him, who defines what a terrorist is? And if you're okay with Obama's definition, what about when the next president gets in office and if they have a different view of what a terrorist is? And the president after that, and so on and so forth. So I asked this same hypothetical question to conservatives and Trump supporters. Let's just say Zoran Mondani becomes president in 2028. Y'all still comfortable with the president having access to all of this power?
Remember those posters that said, "Today is the first day of the rest of your life"? Well, that's true of every day except one. The day you died. I had always heard your entire life flashes in front of your eyes the second before you die. First of all, that 1 second isn't a second at all. It stretches on forever, like an ocean of time. For me, it was lying on my back at Boy Scout camp, watching falling stars, or my grandmother's hands, and the way her skin seemed like paper. I guess I could be pretty pissed off about what happened to me, but it's hard to stay mad when there's so much beauty in the world.
It's just our couch! This isn't life! stuff. And it's become more important to you than living. Well, honey, that's just nuts.
There was a military meeting of U.S. generals and admirals with Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth on September 30th. Now I can go on and on about Trump being upset that he didn't get a round of applause when he came on stage.
I've never walked into a room so silent before. This is very... Don't laugh. Don't laugh. You're not allowed to do that. You know what? Just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank. There goes your future.
Yes, oh so funny. Or I can go on and on about how he called nuclear weapons the N-word.
And it was really a stupid person that works for him mentioned the word nuclear. I moved a submarine or two, I won't say about the two, over to the coast of Russia, just to be careful, because we can't let people throw around that word. I call it the N-word. There are two N-words, and you can't use either of them. You can't use either of them. And frankly, if it does get to use, we have more than anybody else. We have better, we have newer.
Excuse me, President Trump, what are your thoughts on nuclear weapons?
You know, black people.
That is.
Or I could talk about how Pete Hegseth had the nerve to call American troops fat and talk about how in shape he is, considering we have footage of him doing pull-ups.
With physical fitness and appearance. If the Secretary of War can do regular, hard PT, so can every member of our joint force. Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon.
Nah, I won't spend any of my energy talking about any of those items because, quite frankly, it's all political theater. It's a show. It's all entertainment for their fan base. Their fan base who enjoys that pull no punches approach to politics. All it does is gives Fox News topics to joke about and right-wing content creators clips to farm engagement from. No, I'd much rather use my energy to discuss how they floated the idea of using U.S. cities as training grounds for U.S. military. For anyone who has been paying attention, this isn't new. We had this information. This information was provided to the general public, and hell, Kamala Harris talked about it while she was running for president against Trump.
Yesterday, we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. He wants a military who will be loyal to him personally, one that will obey his orders even when he tells them to break the law or abandon their oath to the Constitution of the United States. In just the past week, Donald Trump has repeatedly called his fellow Americans the enemy from within, and even said that he would use the United States military to go after American citizens. And let's be clear about who he considers to be the enemy from within. Anyone who refuses to bend a knee or dares to criticize him would qualify, in his mind, as the enemy within, like judges, like journalists, like nonpartisan election officials. It is deeply troubling and incredibly dangerous that Donald Trump would invoke Adolf Hitler, the man who is responsible for the deaths of 6 million Jews and hundreds of thousands of Americans. All of this is further evidence for the American people of who Donald Trump really is. This is a window into who Donald Trump really is, from the people who know him best, from the people who worked with him side by side in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room. And it is clear from John Kelly's words that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, who in fact vowed to be a dictator on day one and vowed to use the military as his personal militia to carry out his personal and political vendettas. Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged and unstable. And in a second term, people like John Kelly would not be there to be the guardrails against his propensities and his actions. Those who once tried to stop him from pursuing his worst impulses would no longer be there, and no longer be there to rein him in. So the bottom line is this. We know what Donald Trump wants. He wants unchecked power. The question in 13 days will be, what do the American people want? Thank you.
And boy, oh boy, did the American people choose. They chose to go with Donald Trump again after he already had 4 years of failure as an American president. The American public voted him back in because, quite frankly, they did not want to see a black woman in power. They didn't care for how often she laughed. Well, we've already seen the National Guard in Washington, D.C., and we have seen ICE abduct Mexicans and other minorities all around the country, and ICE ramped it up this week as we had a major raid in Chicago.
Yesterday, ICE carried out a massive raid on the south side of Chicago, making it abundantly clear that they're not just looking for illegal immigrants, they're looking for any brown bodies they can get their hands on. I'm Major League, and this is news you need to know. In the South Shore section of Chicago, ICE conducted raids yesterday, detaining 37 people. Apparently, the scale of this operation was massive and military-like, using flashbangs and kicking down doors. They rolled up in unmarked vans in military fatigues, demonstrating a massive show of force.
Dozens of federal agents from different agencies raided an apartment building in the city's South Shore neighborhood early this morning. Neighbors there report multiple arrests in this latest immigration enforcement action. People who live there are telling our Sabrina Franza that American citizens were briefly detained.
Reports say some agents spoke Spanish during arrest, but focused on Black and Latino neighborhoods, taking many Black U.S. citizens into custody. The writing on the wall for everyone to see is that this isn't about immigration paperwork. This is about policing brown bodies. For context here, the Supreme Court recently gave the Trump administration and ICE officials the right to detain and arrest people based on skin color and the language they speak. So in Trump's America, it is totally legal to be this inhumane and morally bankrupt. This is racialized policing disguised as immigration enforcement. The real goal here isn't safety, it's fear. And as usual, Black and brown communities are paying the price. As usual, drop your thoughts in the comments and follow for more Major League news.
So apparently a Black Hawk helicopter flew over this 5-story building, and flashbangs were let off inside of the hallways, and everyone, including U.S. citizens, were detained. People describe guns being put in their face, them being handcuffed for simply being in the building, doors getting kicked down, people being questioned and asked for IDs and questioned if they have warrants, and being drugged out of their apartments and being detained for hours on end. Even children, some who weren't even dressed, were thrown into vans and ripped away from their parents as ICE continued to raid this apartment building. And all of that for the arrests of 37 undocumented immigrants. Many of these people, U.S. citizens, might I remind you, and children, will more than likely suffer for years to come from the trauma of this event. But hey, at least they got those 37 undocumented immigrants off the streets. Something about this still just doesn't quite add up.
You know, sometimes the news stories that make the least sense on the surface start to make perfect sense once you follow the money. Let's take Chicago's South Shore apartment raid, right? 37 arrests, broken doors, terrified families, and what looks like a whole lot of damage control disguised as law enforcement. See, the building at 7500 South Shore Drive didn't belong to some cartel or gang. It's owned by a Wisconsin investor named Trinity Flood, who bought the property along with two others on Clyde and Chapel back in 2020 for about $18 million. Since then, the portfolio's fallen apart, right? Tenants have reported dark stairwells, broken elevators, gas leaks, missing fire extinguishers, the kinds of things that scream neglect, not management. So the city sued her LLC over life safety violations, utilities went unpaid, and by mid-2025, Wells Fargo had filed a $27 million foreclosure against the properties, calling the buildings unsecured and saying management had lost control. Then, 2 weeks after city inspectors visited the property, the Fed showed up. ICE, Border Patrol, ATF, FBI, helicopters, flashbangs, doors blown off their hinges, residents, including U.S. citizens, dragged from beds, some reportedly unclothed, right? 37 people were arrested. Federal officials called it a gang operation targeting Venezuelan migrants. But what's interesting isn't just who was arrested, it's what happened next. See, within 48 hours of that raid, movers were already on site clearing out apartments. A judge, meanwhile, was weighing whether to hand control of the building to a court-appointed receiver. See, the motion came from Wells Fargo, the same bank suing the owner. In other words, the building was collapsing financially. Then the raid happened, and the timing couldn't have been better for the people trying to take possession. See, now no one's saying the raid was planned to help anyone, right? But facts matter, and the facts line up in a way that raises real questions. Because sometimes it's not about who got arrested, it's about who benefited. And in this case, the destruction of property deep in foreclosure may have made one thing a whole lot easier, turning over control to someone else. So if you follow the timeline, you follow the filings, and you remember when power, property, and law enforcement line up perfectly, it's usually not by accident.
And to the crowd of people who back during the 2020 COVID pandemic said that the mask mandate was a huge government overreach, y'all are awfully silent right now. And that begs the question as to why. Well, my answer is probably because the black and brown people of that community that got impacted aren't who y'all view as American.
Now, who can tell me what a pig says? Little Johnny.
Pig says, "Get up against the wall, put your hands on your head, you black motherfucker!"
And the sad part about it is this is the party of the administration of Christianity. There's on the side of town that I live in, there's quite a lot of Christians of various denominations, but it's a very Christian city that I live in. And even though a lot of these people will not openly talk about politics, every so often something slips out. And every last one of these people are Trump supporters. And they are also, quote unquote, Bible thumping, God fearing, Jesus loving Christians. And y'all still think Christianity in America is not the religion of white supremacy?
Narcissists love Christianity because they love being unnecessarily forgiven. Right below that, religious trauma therapists here. Christian environments attract narcissists because they can avoid accountability and twist the ideology to fit their situation. That's absolutely true. And of course, if you're new here, I'm actually a diagnosed narcissist. I say this all the time. The quickest, easiest way for someone to pretend to be a good person is to be just fake being religious. Let's just keep it hot. Not only Christianity, but most times it's going to be Christianity, especially here in America, right? Hey, I know I beat you up. I lied to you. I cheated on you. I stole from you. I did so many different things. But guess what? I picked up a Bible and I read the specific verse that says you have to forgive me. I love Christianity. If you don't forgive me, you're a bad person. You're going to hell. Imagine me, a lying, cheating abuser, going to heaven and you going to hell for not forgiving me. Isn't that crazy? I know that's not how it is, but that's how a lot of toxic, manipulative, narcissistic people are. One of the main places you can find this is absolutely in the government. That's all I'm gonna say. You can find this in the government. The worst fucking people will claim to be religious and just be lying through their teeth at the same time. Like teeth got a gap this wide and they're just lying through their fake ass religious teeth. And I personally hate it. That's why I get so angry. I hate religious and spiritual manipulators, spiritual abusers.
Do me a favor and think about all the people that you have come across in your life who are horrible, manipulative, and they just never learn from their own mistakes, and they're just constantly gaslighting and emotionally traumatizing everyone around them. And I guarantee you, they're a Christian.
And God, we thank you so much for being a loving Father. We thank you for sending your son Jesus to pay the price of sin for us, to take that from us, to go to hell in our place and raise again victorious. For sending your son Jesus.
For sending your son Jesus. For sending your son Jesus to go to hell in our place.
Inside. For clothes that Tristan lost.
You want to see the most beautiful thing I've ever filmed? It was one of those days where it's a minute away from snowing. And there's this electricity in the air. You can almost hear it, right? And this bag was just dancing with me. Like a little kid begging me to play with it. For 15 minutes. That's the day I realized that there was this entire life behind things. And this incredibly benevolent force that wanted me to know that there was no reason to be afraid. Ever. Video's a poor excuse, I know. But it helps me remember. I need to remember. Sometimes there's so much beauty in the world. I feel like I can't take it. And my heart is just going to cave in.
It's hard to stay mad when there's so much beauty in the world. You have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm sure. But don't worry. You will someday.
Senator Booker also said we should have bipartisan agreement. I think that's a great idea. We should have bipartisan agreement. How about we all come together and say, let's stop murders? How about we all come together and say, let's stop rape? How about we all come together and say, let's stop attacking pedophiles?
Stop attacking pedophiles. Stop attacking pedophiles.
Now, let's define beauty. Oxford defines a combination of qualities such as shape, color, or form that pleases the aesthetic senses, especially the sight. They say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Beauty cannot be judged objectively, for what one person finds beautiful or admirable may not appeal to another. The perception of beauty can often be influenced by emotions, including love. So, what does America find beautiful?
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Just a little something from our garden.
Except for the pasta, we got that at Fallaci's.
Right. It's unbelievably fresh. You drop it in the water and it's done. Jim Olmeyer, 2 doors down. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Colonel Frank Fitz, U.S. Marine Corps.
That's nice to meet you. This is my partner.
Jim Berkeley, but people call me JB.
Yeah, let's cut to the chase, okay? What are you guys selling?
Nothing. We just wanted to say hi to our new neighbors.
Yeah. Well, you said you're partners, so what's your business?
Well, he is a tax attorney.
And he's an anesthesiologist.
Sir?
Forgive me, sir, for speaking so bluntly. Those facts make me want to puke my fucking guts out.
Well, me too, son. Yeah, me too.
Sir?
Sexuality is a choice, or at least that's what they say. Earlier, it was mentioned how some of the groups the Trump administration labeled as domestic terrorists included those they viewed as extremists on gender, those who hold hostility towards traditional American views on family, as well as traditional views on morality. That's a lot of words to say they view queer folk and the supporters of their rights as domestic terrorists. Now, why is this administration so against the queer community? Honestly, I think it's for a variety of reasons. On the surface, it's a rally cry to continue to garner support from conservative Christians. Many Christians point out God's views against homosexuality in the Old Testament. Leviticus 18:22 says, "You shall not lie with a man as with a woman. It is an abomination." Leviticus 20:13 says, "If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them." Genesis 19:1-29 talks about the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, they quote these verses, but they never quote the ones against wearing mixed fabrics. Leviticus 19:19 also says, "You shall not wear a garment made of 2 kinds of material." They never talk about the ones about eating shellfish or bottom feeders, because Leviticus 11:10-12 says, "Whatever has no fins or scales in the waters, they are an abomination to you." They never talk about how you need to shave in a certain way, because Leviticus 19:27-28 says, "You shall not round off the hair on your temples or mar the edges of your beard. You shall not make any cuts on your body for the dead or tattoo yourselves." They damn sure don't ever talk about how you're not supposed to charge interest on loans, because in Exodus 22:25 and Deuteronomy 23:19-20 says, "If you lend money to one of my people who is poor, you shall not charge him interest." And with everything going on with immigration in America, they never talk about not leaving food for the poor or immigrants. Because in Leviticus 19:9-10, it says, "When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges. Leave them for the poor and for the foreigner." As the Christian Bible teaches to those who actually read it, all sin separates humans from God. So if homosexuality is such a sin, We should probably keep that same energy with people who mix their fabrics, eat shrimp, participate in capitalism, and apply interest to loans, and those who don't take care of the poor or the foreigner on their land. But we never have those conversations. And the focus is always strictly on homosexuality. Now, one could also argue that we may be looking, reading, and interpreting the Bible incorrectly. A lot of people don't put into consideration that the Bible was not originally written in English. It was foretold from, passed down from generation to generation. And when it was finally originally written, it was written in Hebrew. And then later it was translated to Greek. Then it got translated to English. And then around I believe that was the 15th century, King James came together with Shakespeare and rewrote it in the King James version of the Bible. And that's the reason why it has that Shakespearean twang to the words in it. There has been a lot of speculation around the word that is being used when it describes how a man shall not lay with a man as they do with a woman. And the original word that actually, let's step back. The word homosexual, as it is portrayed, described in the Bible, didn't actually pop up until 1948. There was another word, a Greek word, that I'm not even going to attempt to pretend like I know how to pronounce. But there was originally a Greek word that Paul used during the times of the New Testament that then got translated. And that Greek word at the time did basically mean a man laying with a man. Now, some have questioned if it strictly meant homosexuality or if it had further meanings of selling yourself through prostitution and prostituting yourself to another man. Then furthermore, that word that was originally in the Hebrew Bible was a word that wasn't technically part of their lexicon. It was a word that was rarely used, and it was used kind of more so in a slang term, so it wasn't something that was common. And that is the reason why it's difficult to pinpoint that this exact Hebrew word meant this exact thing that then translated to this Greek word that then translated to this English word that then eventually became the term homosexual in 1948. There are some scholars who have speculated that the original term was actually referring to a boy, and that the original translation was that a man shall not lay with a boy as they do with a woman, basically saying that you shouldn't commit pedophilia. But the word got translated and moved around and shifted for various possible political reasons and turned into what we know today, an all-out attack on homosexuality and a point back to a Bible that has been translated for thousands of years in dozens of different languages. All in all, if you had to ask me, I think that we're persecuting a lot of people because a lot of y'all are uncomfortable with who you truly are.
The reason why the gay community is oppressed and hated so much, especially here in America, is because a lot more people are gay, but they are afraid to stand in their truth. And so they see the community living so proudly and they can't fathom how they can do that. And so they hate them into oppression. Because when you understand spirituality and spiritual psychology, you understand that we only judge things outside of us that we secretly judge ourselves for. And so in order for someone to sit in an energy of homophobia, they must be gay inside of them. Because why do you hate something so much that has nothing to do with you unless it has everything to do with you?
And you can fight that thought process all you want, but we see it time and time again where there are Republican lawmakers who are actively voting against gay marriage and getting caught having gay affairs or getting caught in gay cruising areas. We see it every time there's the Republican National Convention. Grindr reports how their servers crash because there is so much activity going on. We even heard about it recently in Arizona when there was the Charlie Kirk Memorial, and the same thing. It was reported that they had outages on Grindr because of so much activity on the website. Quite frankly, we have a massive problem in America with closeted gay men attempting to persecute others.
MAGA has a major closeted gay male problem. It is busting at the seams, you guys. And I think this is one of the reasons why they're acting so crazy. We all know Grindr exploded after Charlie Kirk's funeral. Everybody's up there praising Jesus, then going out and doing gay stuff at night. Same thing at the RNC. So Kylie, the producer of our show, has been doing some research, and she has some things to share with us. Kylie.
Hi.
Hi, Kylie.
Okay, so we've got a little slideshow.
Okay.
It's a few MAGA politicians and influencers who are anti-LGBTQIA+ that the internet report to be allegedly secretly gay. And today, the most important word is allegedly. So I did deep dives on 4 politicians on Reddit and on Twitter and went deep. And first, we're going to go with the Secretary of State.
Wow.
Marco Rubio.
Really?
So here's who Marco is, right? He wants to undo gay marriage. He wants to end LGBTQ+ protections. He calls the gay marriage bill a stupid waste of time. On Reddit, I found this. Someone posts, you can't forget about Marco Rubio. He and a friend were arrested in the 90s for engaging in presumably illegal activities at Brickell Park after dark. All charges were eventually dropped. The park is cited as being a gay cruising area, and his friend that he was with, Angel Barrios, would later become involved in gay porn. And this is an article on it. Marco Rubio's childhood friend tied to Miami's most infamous gay porn case. So he got caught cruising and he got arrested for this. I found the records.
Kylie, I heard this.
I did not know.
This makes so much sense to me because Marco Rubio's about face,
Yes.
being on, a serious senator that knew that Russia was our adversary. And this goes, for me, this working theory that I've had in my mind, that the secret, closeted, repressed gayness, that it's making like J.D. Vance, a little smoky, of course. And little Marco I had never heard this before, but this makes sense. And I want to be crystal clear, everybody. Gay people are the kindest, nicest, most honest people I know because they have had to do work and overcome all of the judgment and religious judgment from their families, their pastors, society. And if somebody is in the closet in a passive way, it's not my business, and I have empathy for them. But if allegedly Marco Rubio is in the closet, and what did he say about gay marriage, Kylie?
He says it's a stupid waste of time.
Stupid waste of time.
I'm surprised it's not more mainstream out there.
And I have more on him.
Oh.
So this is a Reddit user. In the same thread, they say, I know people who have had sex with Rubio. It's an open secret in Texas. And then when you dive even deeper, someone did a deep dive on his past. So here is an image from 1989. Marco Rubio is in the center here, shirtless, with a bunch of shirtless men, dancing and singing in a South Miami troupe that combined the Chippendales with the Village People. And then we have an image, allegedly, of Marco Rubio at a Miami foam party, okay? And this says, although he is obscured by the man in front of him, Marco Rubio is believed to be in this 1995 photo of a gay South Beach foam party held at the Warsaw Ballroom. Rubio claims he met his wife at one such foam party in 1995.
Well, I'll say neither one of those pictures are convincing to me, but the arrest record.
Yeah, that's more.
And then, in the parks and having a lot of gay friends myself, I know that parks are a part of kind of that hookup culture. That makes a lot of sense.
Now, on a deeper level, freedom of sexuality and gender expression goes against white supremacy and the patriarchy, which both of those two things go hand in hand. Both are systems of control that default Christian white males who are heterosexual as ideal and everyone else less than in a particular ranking system, if you will. They both developed together through colonialism, slavery, and they were infused into our legal and religious systems as well as our political structures. They are designed to trap us in this binary thinking, superior versus inferior, civilized versus savaged, good versus evil. But also, and what I think is the most important to this discussion, is white supremacy needs patriarchal family structures to reproduce itself. White women in white supremacy patriarchy are positioned as reproducers of the race, while white men are protectors of that racial purity. I remember back in October 2013, and this is while Barack Obama was president, there was a National Geographic article that came out that showed a picture of what Americans would look like in 2050. That picture was of a light brown woman with light brown hair and light brown eyes, and she was clearly multicultural. And there was a lot of backlash around it. Now, the question is, come 2050, why would that be the average American and not a Caucasian person of European descent with blonde hair and blue eyes? Especially considering that Caucasians of European descent make up 60% of Americans today. Well, when you start looking at things that have been happening in the country over the course of the past few decades, you will find that white non-Hispanic fertility rate is below the replacement level and has been declining for decades. In 2011, minority birth rates outnumbered non-Hispanic white births for the first time. Birth rates and fertility have been declining among all racial groups, but the decline for whites have been very consistent. Let's not ignore overdose deaths that have increased in the U.S., and with fentanyl being a major culprit directly or indirectly as it is mixed with other drugs, as well as women having the right to abort if they choose to. All of these are items at play that have impacted the Caucasian community in America and has once again caused their birth rates to decline, and their fertility rate is now below a quote unquote replacement level. These people are, it's clear to what they're doing, and it is a dog whistle that the racists understand and that the minorities understand, but all those moderates, those centrists, all those people in the middle just can't seem to really pick up what everyone else is putting down. Make America Great Again has always been about taking America back to its great white roots. That has always been what it's been about. And for those who support Trump directly or indirectly, some moderates who think that the Democrats have gotten too radical and, have sided with Trump for a variety of reasons, please keep in mind that while you're voting for Trump because of the economy or because of his stance on immigration or this, that, and the third, also be clear that white supremacist groups like the Proud Boys and the KKK and a lot of these different white supremacist organizations also voted for Donald Trump. And you got to ask yourself, how is your best interest also aligned with the KKK and white supremacists? How do what y'all feel is great for the country align? And you could say that it's economics, but you can't ignore the fact that you are again voting side by side with the greatest terrorist organizations known to America. Quite frankly, and who knows what happens to me in the future if I continue to talk like this, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Heritage Foundation is the new face of the KKK. They took off the robes and they put on suits and they got in offices. And the Heritage Foundation is walking side by side with Trump through this current administration. And again, quite frankly, they need the white birth rate to increase. And if they allow people to be gay, that means those people also cannot have children. And allowing people to express their gender identity outside of binary means is also a direct attack on the patriarchal system of control. They don't actually care about who you have sex with. They just need you to produce babies and have all of that gay sex in private. And for those of you who are tired of us comparing him to Hitler and this current regime being compared to the Third Reich, again, you should pay attention to history. It's repeating itself.
On May 6, 1933, young Nazis broke into the Institute of Sexology, a scientific organization dedicated to LGBTQ+ advocacy and gender research, and the world's first transgender clinic. Over the course of the next 4 days, they burned the entire contents of the library, including over 20,000 books and countless pieces of literature on reproductive and sexual health across Germany. This is the most important episode of queer history I have ever made, and I am literally begging you to watch the whole thing. The Institute for Sexual Research, or Sexology, depending on translation, pioneered groundbreaking gender care, including the first uterine transplant in Lily Elby. The nonprofit institution was opened in 1919 by Magnus Hirschfeld, a gay, Jewish, and openly liberal doctor in Berlin. Magnus was initially reluctant to perform gender transitioning surgeries, but he changed his mind when he realized that this was life-saving care that could prevent people from attempting to take their own lives. Care included facial feminization and masculinization surgeries, hair removal, and more complicated gender reassignment procedures. I cannot properly express to you how insanely progressive the ideas of the Institute of Sexology were. Dr. Hirschfeld cared for intersex, transgender, gender fluid, and non-binary folks and recognized that gender identity and sexual orientation were entirely separate entities. Dr. Magnus believed that allowing people to present as they pleased was acting in accordance with their nature, not against it. He coined both the words transsexual and transvestite, and he staffed the Institute with psychologists, gynecologists, radiologists, lawyers, general practitioners, and more to provide low-cost or free treatment for sexually transmitted diseases, marital and personal counseling, alcoholism, and gender transitions. However, one of the most popular services they offered was providing birth control, which was illegal to straight couples who were poor or working class. Most of these practices were largely experimental, but even so, Ludwig Levy-Lenz, the Institute's primary surgeon for reassignments, said he had never cared for more grateful patients. As an alternative to conversion therapy, the center taught adaptation therapy, which instructed queer people how to safely navigate a heterosexual world with minimal discomfort to their true selves. Dr. Magnus fought for the political equality of gay and transgender folks, as well as cis women. He advocated for the repeal of paragraph 175, which criminalized homosexuality in Germany, and even got his trans female patients legal identification passes with the gender marker transvestite to prevent them from being arrested for cross-dressing in public. The Institute tried to make their space as welcoming as possible, making it feel plush, warm, and full of life. Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld and his partner, Carl Gies, even lived in the building. The Institute was a safe haven for gathering, hosting costume parties. And this is Magnus and Carl actually holding hands. They also gave LGBTQ+ patients recommendations on local bars and venues where they could find community with each other so as not to feel alone. After undergoing gender transitioning surgeries, many trans women found it difficult to get jobs, and Magnus hired 5 of his own patients to work in the clinic itself. They also had a lecture hall inside of the clinic, inviting medical personnel and community members in to share knowledge that would lead to better science and kinder communities. When the Nazi Youth, the German Student Union, and later that afternoon the SA, which was the Nazis' paramilitary wing, piled the contents of the Institute of the Square, they topped the pile with Magnus's bust before lighting it on fire. Magnus watched this event on a television broadcast as he was out of the country at the time, and he passed away in 1935 from a sudden stroke, never to return to his practice. Hitler was named Chancellor of Germany on January 30th, 1933. This happened May 6th of that year. The Germans who committed this heinous crime were not soldiers, they were just terrible everyday people emboldened by a terrible government who told them that minorities were the root cause of the high rates of inflation and social problems. Any people who were not white, cisgender, and Christian were considered immoral and in need of removal lest they corrupt German youth and ruin the traditional family. Sound familiar? The motto of the Institute of Sexual Research was "Through Science to Justice," reminding us that education is the path to equality. We lost so much ancestral knowledge about our community in this one raid, which is why it is our job to preserve as much information as we can in our minds now. Knowledge is a form of rebellion, and the facts and history that you know can never be taken away from you. The memorial for this particular event has the quote, "Where they burn books, in the end they will burn humans too," a line from a book in Hirschfeld's personal library. Education and queer and trans joy are our largest protections right now. Don't get tired, don't get complacent, get angry, and get informed. I love you. I'll see you next week.
So what is beauty in America? It is preaching the beautiful gospel of the Bible, or at least some parts of it. It is presenting yourself as a beautiful, heteronormative American Christian family, the way tradition has taught us. It is ensuring you stay in line with your assigned sets at birth and that you produce as many babies as you can to correct the decline in birth rate. I mean, who's going to work in those warehouses and offices for the billionaire elites while robots and AI aren't quite advanced enough to take over all of these jobs? Somebody's got to do the work. And lastly, don't forget, they don't care if you're queer. Most of us are. Just do that behind closed doors. You must present yourself in a certain way to the public.
Where's your wife?
I don't know. Probably out fucking that dorky Prince of Real Estate asshole. And you know what? I don't care.
Your wife is with another man and you don't care?
Nope. Our marriage is just for show. A commercial for how normal we are when we're anything but. Yes, man, you are shaking. We really ought to get you out of these clothes.
Yeah.
It's okay. You just tell me what you need. Whoa. I'm sorry. You got the wrong idea.
Now that we understand being American is defined by law, and those laws are being updated as we speak, and beauty is defined by the I, then that must mean that love is what binds the two, what is in one's heart. And in this country, many Americans have a love affair with guns. America's love affair is not of roses or poetry, but that of violence and bloodshed at the hands of its most prized possession. Yeah, this past week kicked off with America's favorite pastime, and that is mass shootings. Late Saturday night, September 27th, a waterfront bar / restaurant in Southport, North Carolina, called the American Fish Company, was shot up by Nigel Matt's Edge. Nigel apparently had a boat that approached from the Cape Fear Riverside. He anchored his boat near the restaurant and fired into the crowd on the outdoor deck. He fled, but roughly 30 minutes later, U.S. Coast Guard detained him on a boat ramp on Oak Island as he was removing his boat. In that incident, 3 people were killed and 6 people were wounded. Now, what do we know about the killer? He was born Sean William DeBose and legally changed his name to Nigel Matt's Edge in 2023. He was 40 years old and lived in Oak Island, North Carolina. He served in the United States Marine Corps from September 2003 to June 2009, and he was deployed in 2 tours in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He reported at one point he was shot in the head while serving in the military, and he sustained traumatic brain injury from said shot. He had reported that he had PTSD and suffered from mental health issues, which is common with people who go to war. He apparently had many run-ins with the law, as the local Oak Island Police Department knew him well. He filed many lawsuits against the police department, the town, a church, medical providers, public figures, like you name it. He filed a lawsuit against them in that community. The suits were based around conspiracies, poisoning, and mistreatments. One example was he had a suit against a local church and claimed they were using hidden cameras and attempted to murder him with poison. Many of these suits were ultimately dismissed by courts for lack of actual evidence. He actually published a memoir titled Headshot, in which he made claims against the military, against the VA, against his own wife, and many others, all of whom reportedly were conspiring against him, trying to poison and kill him. And in the filings for his name change, he mentioned distrusting his family and wanting a new path with a new name. So yeah, it sounds like a unfortunately very disturbed individual with untreated PTSD and mental health issues. Now the question is, why did he do it? Well, what we do know is the attack appeared to be premeditated, down to the location that was targeted. It's believed he may have reconned the location the night before, as there was a boat that was seen anchored near the same location with its lights off. The question is, why that location? And honestly, none of us know. There was no manifesto that was left behind. There was no clear ideological, religious, racial, or group-based motive that was confirmed. And none of the victims had any type of known history with him. So all we do know is that this is a man who spent 6 years in the Marines during the reign of Republican President George Bush Jr. He developed PTSD, and for many years, though, thought everyone, from his wife to friends and family and local churches and local authorities were all secretly out to get him. And even with all of that, he was still able to purchase an AR-style rifle with a suppressor and a scope. And he lived his life unmonitored, unbothered, until the day he snapped and killed innocent people. I guess that's the beauty of being an American. Now, on Sunday, September 28th, there was a service at a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This was a chapel that was in Grand Blanc, Township, Michigan, and it was shot up by Thomas Jacob Sanford. Sanford drove his pickup truck into the church grounds building, exited carrying a rifle, and opened fire on worshipers, and then set the building on fire. I'm assuming it was to maximize the amount of people he would kill, and ultimately 4 people died, 8 others were wounded, and the church suffered significant damage. Sanford was shot and killed after its exchange of gunfire with responding officers. And it was sad because there was one guy that was reportedly at the location who did a news interview, and he said that essentially when the truck hit the church, the people inside of the church thought someone had lost control of their car and had crashed into their church, and they went out to help this person. And this guy describes as he came out and as he can see the American flags on the back of the truck, he knew that something more sinister was afoot. Now, what do we know about the killer? Thomas Jacob Sanford was also 40 years old. He lived near the city of the incident and was a former U.S. Marine. He served from June 2004 to June 2008, and he also was one of the Marines deployed in Operation Iraqi Freedom. The people who knew him also suspected he suffered from PTSD, and he reportedly had a heavy drug use years earlier. As I just mentioned, his pickup truck had large American flags in the bed, and people were able to locate his house, and Google Street View searches showed he had a Trump sign outside of his house. Now, the question is also, why did he do it? And as far as we're aware of, no manifesto has been found. So one can only speculate. It was mentioned that Thomas had issues with the Mormon faith and called Mormons the Antichrist. So it may have been religiously motivated. There was also some stories of him also being anti-LGBTQ. So there's that. In summary, what we do know is this was yet another man who was deployed to Iraq under George Bush Jr., who had claimed that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction, and he sent hundreds and hundreds of American men and women into the battlefield out in Iraq, and many of these people came home with PTSD and drug and alcohol problems. Now, this man in particular, he did continue to be a Republican, and he was a supporter of Trump. And quite frankly, Trump has riled up his followers with these false claims of fake news and these grand conspiracies against Americans and this war on Christianity. And I don't know, this man proceeded to then actually attack and wage a war on Christian church. And unfortunately, directly after all of this happened, Democrats and leftists got all of the blame. So I guess that's the beauty of being an American. No matter what you do, someone else will be blamed for your actions.
So not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 mass shootings across the country in 24 hours. It's interesting, I haven't heard anything about political affiliation.